You know, a photograph is a strange thing. It's a moment, frozen in time, just a sliver of time captured and held still. We usually think of them as memories, as keepsakes. Maybe a birthday party, a graduation, a quiet afternoon. But what if that frozen moment isn't a happy one? Something ugly, something foolish, something never meant to be seen. Suddenly that sliver of time isn't just a memory. It becomes a weapon. It turns into a judgment, a permanent stain that follows you. The click of a shutter can feel so small, its echo can be deafening and lasting. We live in a world saturated with images. Our phones are cameras, social feeds are endless pictures. We snap, we post, we scroll, we forget. A constant, churning river of visual information. But sometimes, one image gets snagged, pulled from the river and held up. It goes viral. So, before the flight, Justine Sacco was a successful public relations executive. She had a good job, a comfortable life, a small, almost insignificant Twitter account with just a few hundred followers. She used it to make jokes, often edgy ones, to a small circle of friends. On a fateful day in 2013, as she boarded a long flight to Cape Town, South Africa, she typed out a tweet. "Going to Africa. Hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding. I'm white." She pressed send, turned off her phone, and settled in for the 11-hour flight, unaware of what she'd started. While Justine was in the air, her tweet was discovered, retweeted by a tech journalist with a large following, and then it exploded. Stripped of context, the message read as shockingly racist and ignorant. People were furious. Lindsay Stone was a woman who really loved her job. She worked for a nonprofit organization, helping adults with learning disabilities live full and happy lives. She had this running joke with a coworker where they'd take silly photos of themselves, pretending to defy rules or act out in inappropriate places. One of those places was the Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. While visiting the tomb of the unknown soldier, a sacred place of silent, solemn respect, Lindsay posed for a picture. In the photo, she pretended to be yelling and giving the middle finger next to a sign that read, "Silence and Respect." It was a stupid joke, meant only for her and her friend. She posted it on her private Facebook page, but, as you might guess, the photo didn't stay private. Someone on her friends list saw it, was offended, and shared it. Katherine Rich was a successful food lobbyist in New Zealand, the chief executive of the Food and Grocery Council. She was well respected in her field, known for her sharp intellect and effective advocacy. Her life was a world away from online controversy and public shaming. However, her husband was a prominent right-wing blogger and political commentator. Through his connections, she found herself at a party with controversial visitors. At the party, a photograph was taken. In the photo, Katherine, her husband, several controversial figures, some making hand gestures. The photograph went online. The image was toxic for the public and for the companies the council represented, major supermarkets, food manufacturers. The brands could not risk association. The photograph became a massive liability. The emotional toll on Katherine Rich was immense. She had built a reputation on competence and neutrality. Now she was judged by a single picture. Pressure from member companies built. Ultimately, after intense pressure, Katherine Rich resigned as chief executive. The photo made it impossible to do her job. In the summer of 2018, a photograph taken at the US-Mexico border captured the world's attention. It showed a 2-year-old Honduran girl crying hysterically as her mother was being searched and detained by a US Border Patrol agent. The image was, truly heart-wrenching. It seemed to perfectly encapsulate the cruelty of the family separation policy that was in effect at the time. The little girl's raw, unfiltered anguish became a symbol of the human cost of a political debate. The photo appeared on the front pages of newspapers around the globe, and was even featured on the cover of Time magazine, where the crying child was photoshopped to be looking up at President Donald Trump. The photo ignited a firestorm of outrage. It fueled protests and honestly intensified the condemnation of the administration's immigration policies. To millions of people, this image was undeniable proof of families being torn apart. The little girl became the face of thousands of separated children. Her pain was used to score political points, to raise funds for activist groups, and to galvanize opposition. The photographer John Moore, who won a World Press Photo of the Year award for the image, said that even he thought the child and her mother were about to be separated. The visual narrative was so powerful, so emotionally compelling, that it seemed to be the absolute truth. However, the full story was more complicated. Before the internet, a moment of public shame was a local affair. If you did something foolish, the people in your town might talk about it for a week. Maybe it would make the local paper, but eventually it would fade. People would forget. You could move on. Social media changed everything. A global village without forgiveness. A massive, interconnected machine for one thing. Amplification. Now, a misstep in one corner of the world gets broadcast everywhere in minutes. A spark of local outrage becomes a global wildfire. A person posts an offensive photo, a person posts an offensive comment. In the past, only their immediate circle would see it. Today, their followers see it. A few, outraged, share it with their followers. First ripple, then an influencer with tens of thousands amplifies it, or a journalist with tens of thousands. The ripple becomes a wave. The post stops being a private mistake, it becomes public content. The algorithm sees the spike in shares and comments. It flags the post as interesting and shows it to more people. People with no connection to the original see it. The pile-on begins. Strangers with righteous anger and anonymity descend. The public shaming might feel like a hurricane. It arrives with furious intensity, tears your life apart, and then, after a few days or weeks, the storm moves on. The mob finds a new target. The trending topics change. For the public, the story is over. But for the person at the center of it, the ordeal is far from finished. The storm has passed, but the wreckage remains. And worse, a ghost lingers. That one photograph, that single ruinous image, now has a permanent home on the internet. It exists on news articles, on blog posts, in social media archives, and in the deep memory of Google's servers. It becomes the first thing people find when they search for your name. Imagine trying to apply for a job. The hiring manager, as they always do, types your name into a search engine. The first result is not your LinkedIn profile or a positive article about your work. It's the photo. It's the news story about your scandal. It's the moment that you wish the world would forget, presented as the most important fact about you. How do you explain that in an interview? For many, it's an impossible task. Living in the modern world requires a new kind of awareness. We must become the vigilant guardians of our own digital lives. The first and most simple piece of advice is the oldest in the book. Think before you post. Before you upload that photo or send that tweet, pause for a moment. Next, you must become the master of your privacy settings. We have looked at the stories of ordinary people whose lives were thrown into chaos by a single photograph. A bad joke, a foolish pose, an unfortunate association, a moment of distress taken out of context. The people in these stories are not monsters, they are human beings who made human errors. Their punishment was wildly disproportionate to their crime. We, as consumers of social media, are part of this system, but we must remember the person on the other side of the screen. The next time a scandalous photo appears on your feed, pause. Resist the immediate urge to share it. Empathy is the antidote to the poison of public shaming. It is the conscious choice to see the humanity in the person, not just the flaw in the photograph. In the end, a photograph is just a photograph. It is a flat, silent, two-dimensional representation of a single instant. Our lives are a motion picture, not a snapshot.